I wanted to stream today because I also wanted to talk about the new bevy of information that was just dumped to us about Resident Evil 4 Remake by GameInformer. And I know there are a lot of summaries about, what was being covered, and I wanted to just go over the actual pages themselves. Although I'm not going to show obviously the pages on here, but just for copyright purposes, I am going to go through all of it. Let's see. Okay. RE4 set the template for basically every third-person video game after it was released in 2005. Pretty much true. Leon S. Kennedy's bloody romp through a parasite-infected Spanish village garnered universal acclaim for its deft balance of horror and action, and most of all, its revolutionary third-person over-the-shoulder gameplay. This perspective served as an epiphany for the games industry, and Resident Evil as a series has never been the same. RE4 was ahead of its time. It also aged remarkably. That it did. Very much so. It plays so well that Capcom has spent the last 18 years re-releasing and remastering Resident Evil 4 on nearly every platform. Depending on the hardware, it received additional story scenarios and content, an HD graphics upgrade, motion controls, and most recently, a first-person VR remake. Despite some aging mechanics, many fans still swear by its original blueprint, making the idea of a remake a lofty proposition. Isn't it the second or third most ported game in history? Behind Skyrim and something else. Maybe it's the second most behind Skyrim. Maybe the most. I don't remember. But even so, the success of the Resident Evil 2 remake led fans to believe a similar overhaul of the fourth game was a foregone conclusion. However, even Capcom initially hesitated about fiddling with RE4's legendary formula, transforming clunky PS1 titles into a more palatable experience in an easy sell, but could it get away with rebuilding a game that, while nearly 2 decades old itself, many still consider the peak of action survival horror? Is it the peak though? I mean, there are some changes that are obvious that can be made. I wouldn't say as good as RE4 is, I'm not sure if it's untouchable. There are some things that could be changed here and there. For as much as I love the game myself, and in terms of how much it means to me, I feel like there could be some new things added to it, as I hope that they will do in this remake. According to Capcom, answering this conundrum was surprisingly simple: less is more. Instead of completely resculpting the experience as it had with RE2, the developer-publisher instead aims to largely preserve Resident Evil 4's core design and features, dialing them up to 11 while applying a thick coat of modernization. The scares have been amplified, the gunplay feels better than ever, and it all looks gorgeous thanks to the power of the RE engine. Dude, the RE engine is amazing. Dude, what the RE engine is doing for Street Fighter 6 as well as this game is phenomenal. It looks beautiful, and I can't wait to see what Capcom does in the future with it. Which first premiered in RE7 Biohazard and has now been used in games such as DMC5, the upcoming Street Fighter 6, and more. New features emphasizing increased player choice and flexibility enhance the experience, and exciting surprises await veterans who know the adventure inside and out. Oh, that's exciting. New features in emphasizing increased player choice and flexibility enhance the experience. I mean, to some degree, you can do that in the original RE4, right? If you so choose, right? If you wanted to just, I don't know, do a red 9 only run, or a shotgun only run, or a knife only run. It was possible, but I think you had to obviously cheese the game a bit. Here, if they're really emphasizing that and really honing in on, developing the game around player choice and at least flexibility and hopefully replayability, then that'd be pretty great. I mean, you're oftentimes just running through, collecting everything, getting all the key items, and most of the time it ends up being speed runs, but I mean, that's the beauty of it all, you know? So I'm really looking forward to how they're changing things up in this way. Plus it adds more to, like, you know, the replayability of the game overall. Can't believe it's come to this, honestly. It's been way too long, nearly 20 years later. Granted, like, I didn't play this game until it hit the PS2 around like 2005, 2006. But when I first saw this game, it was kind of like love at first sight. I remember buying I think it was like a GamePro magazine, and it came with this demo disc showcasing a bunch of trailers of upcoming games, and I think RE4 was like one of those games, and it showcased the beginning village section where Leon would run through, go into the house, and you know, Dr. Salvador would come in with his chainsaw, and I was like, holy shit, like this game it looks phenomenal, you know, with just Leon running through the houses, shooting everyone, shotguns, pistols to the face, roundhouse kick. The sound design was amazing. It was intense. And I was like in 5th grade, but I thought this was like a great looking game, and I loved every single bit of it. It was as much of an enjoyable experience watching someone play the game as it was playing through the game itself. And that speaks volumes. It's such an enjoyable game to watch and play. So this game coming out, you know, considering its like legacy and, you know, its impact on everything else that came after it is incredible, and it remained like one of my favorite games of all time. An intimidating legacy. After launching the Resident Evil Remake in 2020, Capcom decided RE4 would be the next entry to get a modern facelift. Capcom tasked RE2 Remake directors Yasuhiro Ampo and Kazunori Kadoi with the unenviable assignment. The pair's 2019 revision of the 98 sequel earned heaps of praise, and some consider it one of the best games of the previous generation. That it was really fun. I didn't play RE2 Remake until much later. I think last year, I believe. And it was great. I mean, honestly, like, I can see why it was considered to be a nominee for, or a runner-up for Game of the Year. But I was kind of concerned that, like, you know, they wouldn't do that much to RE4 Remake, but it seems like they are. It seems like they're obviously keeping the spirit of the original, as well as you know, adding a couple new things to it, as they did say earlier with the, like, you know, dialing things up to like 11, you know. So I wouldn't want it necessarily to be a one-to-one remake, but just for there to be enough changes to the game that will obviously surprise everyone and will leave a lasting impression on players and at least new audiences alike, you know, for enough for them to like go back to the original and play through that themselves as well, just for like posterity's sake. The RE4 is a different animal, and the pressure was immense. Wait. And some consider it one of the best games of the previous. Okay, but no. Honestly speaking, I didn't want to do it. Says Ampo. The bar is just set so high. Among the RE series and even games in general, the original RE4 has become a legend. I knew that it would be difficult to successfully remake it, and if we made one mistake with any updates we made, we would anger its fans. That you would. It's a highly revered game. After replaying RE4 and collecting the team's opinions, the elements ripe for improvement began popping out, and the two felt confident they could do the game justice. What's up, Alan? Thank you, man. They also honed in. Wait. Collecting the right for improvement, and the two felt confident they could do the game justice. It seems like what I mean. I like the RE2 team. Like, it's like their Division 1 team at Capcom, right? RE3 Remake was an okay game, but it had so much more potential going for it. Like, it could have done so much more. But that's only because that game was outsourced to a different team, mostly, and they cut out too much, you know? Not to mention that in the beginning, if you were to buy it at like $60, that game was like a 4 to 6 hour experience with like very underwhelming sequences of fighting Nemesis and not that much replayability. It's a very, very, very linear experience, RE3 Remake. They also honed in on the design pillars they personally loved about the game, principles they believed were responsible for its sustained popularity, fun replayability, and the flexibility to enjoy the game in different ways. Yeah, we talked about that. I played chapters 1 and 5, sampling Leon's gameplay and understanding how this approach shapes up. In chapter 1, Leon is still alone, and in chapter 5, he cooperates with Ashley Graham, the president's daughter. Okay, fun replayability and flexibility to enjoy the game in different ways. I for sure will be doing multiple playthroughs of this game. I mean, I've already done the same for OG, and you know, I don't find myself not doing the same for this one. Reinventing fundamentals. Chapter 1 begins with Leon trekking through an early moonlit forest path leading to a remote village in rural Spain. Now a military-trained government agent, he's on a mission to locate Ashley, who's believed to be held captive somewhere in the area by a sinister group for an unknown purpose. Veterans can expect to relive the same general narrative beats, though the plot unfolds within the revamped continuity of the previous remakes. Capcom says the story has a few new twists it won't specify, but is mainly faithful to the original. Mainly faithful to the original. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less, honestly. Like if they excluded anything from the original game, I think people would be pissed the fuck off. Right? Like, because everything about RE4 is so incredibly memorable that it, you know, even though some people have gripes about, like, you know, the island or the minigun enemies, I forgot what their name was, on the island, for the most part, just the way the game flows and progresses when, you know, what Leon gets himself into is just so fun and memorable. It just, there's no way that they were gonna cut out like Krauser or whoever, you know? But I really do hope that the changes that they make are very substantial, or at least the little additions that they make will enhance the story. But I do know that I think one of the producers said that the length of the game is largely the same as like the original, so I'm not sure how that affects things. Capcom has previously showcased portions of this opening section, but it's hard to get a sense of RE4's improvements by only watching. Controls feel identical to the previous RE remakes, meaning it's substantially better and feels like a contemporary third-person shooter. It's nice to have Leon move while shooting. Producer Yoshiaki Hirabayashi guided us through this section and revealed that RE4's features 6 different control schemes, including one styled after the 2005 configuration for fans seeking a more familiar experience. How are you gonna do that? I'm like, that's cool and all. I'm not gonna use that control scheme, but I'm like, how the hell do you work around that one? I guess like having Leon stop and just like shooting without moving. While a nice touch, I'm more than okay with sticking with the improved setup. I enter the first cabin where the original game begins. There are more rooms and items to uncover, such as ammo, hidden herbs, and even locks requiring keys. The cabin is also much spookier, giving me my first taste of the game's darker atmosphere. Though the tone feels more oppressive, Leon's cornball attitude remains intact. Expect quips such as, "Bill me for the repairs later," to help cut some tension. I soon come face to face with the first Ganado, one of the many villagers whose bodies are hijacked by Las Plagas. A parasitic creature granting increased strength, durability, and other freaky tricks. His neck sits snapped to its side, making his head rest on his shoulder at a gruesome angle. This visual isn't just a horrific touch. Capcom calls this out as an example of how it uses gameplay to achieve greater narrative cohesion, or in layperson's terms, visual hints, contributing to world building. A broken neck is a telltale sign that a Ganado is in the later stage of infection. That means it's not only stronger, but you're more likely to see it perform its signature trick, ejecting a mass of pulsating flesh tentacles from the neck that can eviscerate Leon with their scythe-like appendages. Ugh. And what is it? There are like obviously some screenshots here and here. Pretty gnarly looking, honestly. I mean, it doesn't look that crazy compared to like the original, but it's nice to finally see them fully realized. Thankfully, it doesn't come to that. Using the new quick weapon select, in which up to 8 firearms, knives, and grenades can be equipped and swapped on the fly, I pull out my pistol and unload rounds. Shooting feels weightier and more impactful. The PS5 DualSense haptic feedback features add to this sensation. Targeting limbs disable them entirely. Excuse me. And headshots create a satisfying, albeit disturbing, crunch. Yeah, I mean, I can surmise that much, like from seeing the gameplay that was released, like what, 3 months ago in October? Like, I really like how the pistol sounds. I don't necessarily like how the shotgun sounds. I feel like the shotgun sounds can be improved. But no, yeah, I mean, I really, like, if you go back to watch, like, whenever a gun is being shot in RE4 Remake, it sounds great. It really does. A traditional reticle replaces the pistol's laser sight from the original game. I asked Hirabayashi about this change, who explained that the team merely wanted RE4 to fall more in line with contemporary third-person shooters. This loss is only temporary. You can acquire an attachable laser sight later in the game. Aiming still feels precise without this assist, but tougher to pull off, mainly because the Ganados maneuver in a more erratic fashion than before. I waste several shots as he bobs and weaves out of harm's way before he suddenly lunges to seize me. Though Leon can now quickly dodge away from danger, I fail and get caught. Though Leon can now quickly dodge away from danger? He can't actually dodge roll or like strafe or anything. I mean, he can strafe, but like he can't actually. There isn't a dedicated button to have Leon dodge, right? I don't think I've seen that, because you can do that in RE4, but can he do that in I mean RE3 Remake, but can he do that in RE4? What the fuck? I know like Jill in RE3 can do that because she's obviously like smaller and more maneuverable, but yeah, that's strange. I don't think you can though. They haven't shown any indication that you can actually dodge away from enemies. I can mash the X button to escape, but I opt for acquainting my combat knife with his throat by responding to an R2 prompt, dropping my would-be killer for good. Despite how it appears, don't expect the remake to feature many QuickTime events like the original. One of Capcom's main goals from the start was to do away with these antiquated sequences while reworking some of them into more engaging forms that better fit modern gaming. Knife combat is one of the most prominent examples of this mechanical shift. QTEs. Kind of like mashing X to run away from like a boulder coming at you, or like the Krauser knife fight, or running away from Salazar's like gigantic robot that's like crumbling over the bridge. I mean, there was only a handful of QTEs in the original game, right? The only substantial one being obviously the Krauser knife fight, which was super cool, but I think they'll work their way around that. I have a lot of confidence in Capcom to be able to replace those QTEs. A little disappointing, right? Because it is part of the original, but it is what it is. I'm not too like miffed about that. What are you buying? The beloved shopkeeper is back, and on top of being chattier, he offers more to players this time around. In addition to buying and selling weapons, you can now trade jewels for items such as treasure maps, yellow herbs that raise maximum health, special weapons, and mods like the laser sight. You'll also visit the merchant to turn in side quests. What are you buying? I can't believe he's still around. I mean, it would be hard to imagine RE4 without him. Brandishing Leon's trusty blade right before the melee attack connects. Right before the melee attack connects, triggers a parry that knocks foes back, adding a welcome layer of defense. Plus, it just feels cool to execute. Once the parry mechanic had been implemented, from that point when I played the original, I found myself wanting to parry in the original as well, says Kadoi. That was when I felt things became really interesting. However, parrying comes with a cost. Taking a page from the RE2 remake, the knife now has limited durability and can break, meaning parrying is a strategic choice. You can carry multiple knives, and their sturdiness and lethality can be improved by visiting the merchant. Parrying creates a rhythmic dance of deflecting enemies before... Oh shit. Okay, cool. Before taking a pot shot or hitting Leon's signature roundhouse kick. It also makes knife-only runs a more exciting possibility. The team did confirm that it's still feasible to beat RE4 using only knives, a feat Kadoi claims to have pulled off. Only knives? A knife-only run in RE4 Remake? How do you do that with your knives breaking and all? If it has what the fuck? That'd be interesting. I don't know if I would want to go through that myself, but I'd be down to try, I guess. A tough crowd. I continue my journey to the village, fending off a few ganados and avoiding well-hidden bear traps until I find the remains of the dog Leon has the choice to rescue in the original version. He's not so lucky this time, though Capcom coyly teases that maybe its fate isn't what it appears. I reach the village and pull out my binoculars to spy the residents milling about as one of Leon's police escorts is set ablaze on a stake in the town's center. At this point in the original, players can either charge in guns blazing or try to sneak in and pick enemies off quietly. That's still the case here, but stealth is far more viable now that Leon can crouch and move discreetly. I'm trying to imagine how you would go about doing that in the beginning, right? If you were to successfully just pick everyone off stealthily using the weapons that are available to you in the beginning, which are just like obviously a pistol with no silencer, how the hell would you do that with just a knife that has durability, right? Wouldn't you at most be able to like kill off maybe, I don't know, 7 to 10 ganados with just a knife? Does he have stealth kills as well with a knife? That's pretty crazy, to be honest to think about. Fuck. I take the first path on the right, creep up to an oblivious villager, and knife her down before she can react. Oh. Knife her down before she can... Okay, I'm just gonna assume that there are prompts for you to like just one-hit kill a villager from behind. Silently picking off foes feels good, and I opt to thin the herd as quietly as possible. That goes well until I step in plain view of an enemy, blowing my cover and the mob descends upon me. I'm pretty certain that that won't be the only case where you can implement stealth, or at least like go through, choose to do stealth in, you know, the game's areas or like against the enemies. Right? There has to be more encounters where you can be flexible with how you approach a situation. That's fun, dude. Oh my god, that's great. Like just thinking about it. As I learned during my cabin encounter, the ganados are harder to shoot, especially in groups. I can survive this onslaught without much trouble in the original, so I'm surprised at how quickly I'm surrounded and overwhelmed here. This section is intense. Hurting the mob into your line of fire is challenging. Their newfound unpredictability gives the ganados an intimidating factor they haven't had in years. To cope, I take advantage of the more plentiful environmental traps, such as shooting down lanterns that burst into flames on impact. Sometimes even cows can catch fire, causing them to sprint off in a panic, or they trample and ignite enemies in a wild visual. And yeah, we see that in the gameplay. Oh gosh, sorry. We see that in the gameplay reveal 3 months ago, where he just lights a cow on fire. Obviously, yeah, you can shoot like lanterns in the original game, but they just fell vertically and they just caused like, you know, a small explosion similar to like a incendiary grenade. But I'm curious like what other traps are out there. Like, I wonder how creative they can get with it. The intensity ratchets when some fallen Ganados begin convulsing unnaturally on the ground. If you see this, you need to perform a ground execution immediately. Take too long and they rise again stronger, neck snapped, and possibly sporting a fleshy tentacle hat. The fuck? Fighting through crowds to stop a single enemy from becoming a more significant threat is a devilishly fun addition, forcing me to be extra mindful of everyone I drop and to ensure they were down for the count before moving on. Eventually, the dreaded Chainsaw Man makes his menacing presence known. This tank-like enemy still absorbs a ton of bullets, and the Ganado's increased rabidness makes avoiding the wrong end of his chainsaw even more challenging. As he pursues Leon, he destroys some paths with his weapon, thus limiting your escape routes. It's here that Hirabayashi informs us that these blockades created by the Chainsaw Man persist when you revisit this village square later for a nice touch of continuity. So it's not necessarily scripted, right? Like, from the gameplay footage that we saw last time, like a small little cutscene played that focused specifically on Dr. Salvador breaking down like a couple beams up top, like above him, and I don't know if it would turn into some kind of like ramp, but is it like, what is it, is it like context sensitive, right? Do you have to like trigger certain do you have to run around the map and like trigger certain areas where he would do that? And I'm wondering like, oh, does it lead to hidden areas? Like, does it lead to treasure? Does it lead to whatever? Don't know. By the skin of my teeth, I complete this section without dying, with Leon delivering his signature bingo line as my reward. Hirabayashi takes it upon himself to reload the sequence and get Leon killed, so I can witness one of his many gruesome death scenes. I watch a Ganado grab Leon's head and brutally shove his thumbs through his eyes as he screams in agony and his sockets run red. Leon has several grisly new ways of meeting his demise and their startling motivations to stay alive whenever possible. Ashley finds her footing. I jump to chapter 5, which begins shortly after Leon has retrieved Ashley. The two hide on the upper level of the village church where a procession arrives to conduct their twisted ritual. We sneak outside with Leon catching Ashley as she jumps down from the church window, a nod to the original. Night has fallen and it's pouring rain, but we must make our way toward a helicopter extraction point. It's here that fans may agree that RE4 truly begins. Working with Ashley and keeping her out of danger is a defining element of the experience, one that was also somewhat controversial in its day. That mainly stems from some players viewing Ashley as an annoying nuisance. Kinda. At least in my experience, she wasn't that bad. But I understand the frustration sometimes. Capcom wants to keep the core characterization of the cast, so I can't promise you'll suddenly love Ashley if she bugged you before. I will say that her new voice actress brings her to life in a more believable fashion. In the cutscenes I witnessed and in her moment-to-moment dialogue, she comes off as a little more serious, a bit less bratty, and genuinely terrified in a way that made me empathize with her plight. I never hated Ashley, but I already prefer this version of her. By clicking the R3 button, players command Ashley to follow closely or hang further back. She can't stay put though. Even when keeping her distance, Ashley still moves with Leon, albeit with a wider gap between them. Having Ashley trail behind keeps her out of immediate danger, but it also puts her at risk of getting scooped up and carried away by a distant enemy. That's a significant change from the original, where you could order Ashley to freeze, engendering a strategy I, and likely many others, exploited by regularly dumping her in a safe space to clear out enemies worry-free. Capcom wanted to negate that tactic this time around. Damn. I guess as the reason for why they wanted to do that was to obviously instill another level of fear, right? The fear of loss and of just dying in that moment, which means that they're gonna set up for some pretty gnarly moments where you obviously, like, Ashley can get captured or killed very quickly, which may or may not prove to be frustrating. That it can be, it has potential, right? Yeah, so who knows? We'll see. We will see. Hopefully it wouldn't be like so much of a burden, because obviously they're aware of, you know, people's frustrations with taking care of Ashley and watching over her. And I think they'll take care of it this time around. I have complete faith. Having Ashley go hide somewhere else defeats the purpose of having her with you. Exactly, says Godoy. The other reason for this change is to create a greater sense of realism. Yeah, because putting her in a dumpster is just the complete antithesis of you know, trying to escape a murderous village full of inhabitants who are trying to, like, kill you with chainsaws and shit. Given the situation, Ashley would never want to be left alone under any circumstances, and the team even considered having the pair hold hands early in development. What? Well, thankfully they didn't do that, because how the fuck would Leon shoot? Just one hand, just freely? This attention to realism is also the inspiration behind Ashley's new suit jacket and stockings, which add to her traditional outfit. It's chilly outside after all. Attention to realism. I guess. I mean, it's also inspired by, like, RE3.5. Like, she literally has practically the same outfit from that, as well as Leon does with his jacket. Another notable difference is Ashley no longer has a health bar. Players won't have to worry about spending precious herbs healing her since she recovers over time. It does, however, mean you need to keep a closer eye on Ashley's well-being now that it's not communicated as explicitly. Some enemies drop her with a few hits, others with only one. Fuck, what? Some enemies drop her with a few hits, others with only one. I mean, I guess, yeah, that makes sense. Like, if some dude with a hammer just, like, knocks her out, then yeah, I expect it to be just, like, one hit. That's scary. That's already scary. When Ashley absorbs too much damage, she'll enter a down state where players must revive her by holding a button. If she's struck while injured, it's bye-bye Ashley and hello game over screen. If you're reviving her while you have a bunch of enemies surrounding you, do you have iframes? Like, are you invincible during that? Capcom wants Ashley to feel more helpful, so it added more environmental situations requiring two heads instead of one. They can be as simple as lifting Ashley to a platform to get down a ladder, or sending her through a small crawl space to unlock a door from the inside. You'll encounter several of these tag team focused barriers before meeting her, providing an incentive to revisit previous areas. Capcom hopes these changes will help Ashley feel more like a natural companion and less like a second health bar to babysit. Yeah, okay, pretty reasonable. I mean, I don't think they're gonna make the game that difficult, right, to begin with. Like, everyone's gonna start off, like, playing the game on normal. Maybe there will be, like, a hard difficulty setting, who knows. but I suspect people will try to go through that, and you know, if the hard difficulty is not as fun as it may be, then it might hamper the game experience a bit. The graveyard shifts. As I carefully escort Ashley through the Ganados latent cemetery, my attempt at stealth fails again, and the hostile torch-bearing villagers... Wait, let me read that again. As I carefully escort Ashley through the Ganados latent cemetery, my attempt at stealth fails again. Wow. That's crazy. So... attempt at stealth. How many? Yeah, just how many? Like, can there... The big question is, can there be a stealth only run in this game? Excluding like main moments like fighting mini bosses or main bosses, right? That's fun. That sounds fun already. Like, that already is deserving of like second playthrough type shit. At this point, parasites erupt from their heads left and right, forcing me to deal with a parade of these monstrosities. Thankfully, I now have a more complete arsenal. Expect to see the classic weapon lineup return, such as the pistol, shotgun, rifle, and submachine gun, which I seamlessly cycle through to blast these threats apart. Targeting their mutated eyes deals extra damage, but since the Plaga is sensitive to light, tossing a flash grenade still causes their heads to explode in a shower of infected goo. I exhaust much of my ammo in this section, but players can craft bullets from scratch within the menu. As in the previous remakes, collecting and mixing various gunpowders creates ammos for such firearms. Capcom included this mechanic to ensure players could continue using their favorite weapons rather than being forced to use a gun only because they had its ammo and nothing else. Though it may sound like this makes RE4 an easier game, the fact that enemies are harder to hit means I still strategically picked my shots and burned through ammo. At least during my playtime, it seems the team has struck a good balance. You already know, like, a lot of OG like RE4 players are just gonna go for headshots and go for roundhouse kicks all the time. And what, like doing knife kills as well? that is like the surefire way to preserve ammo. I eventually find a new weapon in the game, the bolt thrower. This nifty crossbow fires piercing arrows that can be retrieved and used again. The bolt thrower. It also makes less noise than a standard firearm, making it ideal for picking off enemies in stealth. Cool. Will it be the only item or weapon in the game that allows you to conduct things in stealth? With Hirabayashi's guidance, I locate detachable mines and equip them in the bolt thrower, granting each shot an explosive punch. These can also detonate in the proximity of enemies, letting you strategically fire mines in the paths of patrolling Ganados. Though I only saw the bolt thrower, Capcom confirmed other new specialized weapons are in the game. Darn, okay. While taking down familiar foes, a new challenger bursts into the fray. This brick house of a farmer wears the severed head of a bull as a mask, making him resemble a deranged minotaur. He also carries a giant hammer to pound Leon into ground beef. I'm completely thrown off guard by this unfamiliar face, and he takes advantage of my surprise by running me over with a battering ram-like charge. I recover and fire several shotgun blasts into his ample gut, which at first barely stagger him. Eventually, he reaches a breaking point and drops to a knee, creating a window to perform a forward kick to push him back. Some well-timed dodges allow me to maneuver this giant, and he finally goes down after a few more shots and no small degree of effort. Capcom teases that this bullman isn't the only new threat lying in wait for players. As for boss battles, Capcom states it has captured the essence of what most of them were in the original while overhauling others, but won't go into specifics. Another addition I encounter is side quests. These take the form of blue flyers posted around the environment. The few I collect offer tasks such as solving a puzzle, delivering the carcasses of 3 snakes, and tracking and killing a plaga-infested wild dog. It's not that dog. The Blue Medallion quest from the original also falls under this umbrella. After completing side quests, you must turn them into the merchant for a reward, though you can sometimes return to the main areas later to complete unfinished tasks. You'll know a point of no return is coming when the merchant drops not so subtle suggestions to wrap up any errands. How funny. I wonder how many side quests there are. I mean, it seems like there's gonna be a lot of backtracking, yeah? A lot of backtracking. I complete some of these tasks effortlessly, but the infected dog quest requires more poking around, as Hirabayashi informs me triggering its appearance requires taking a special route. He takes the controller from me and Leon comes face to face with a plagas-riddled canine boasting oversized teeth, glowing eyes, and a backside teeming with tentacles. It's unsurprisingly vicious, and Hirabayashi dumps a ton of ammo into his sturdy quarry, barely surviving before it finally keels over in defeat. It's a neat little battle not seen in the original, making me curious about what other kinds of hunts Resident Evil 4 has in store. As for puzzles, Capcom states it hasn't duplicated any of them exactly, but they'll reappear in spirit. Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that they're gonna make like new puzzles, right? The church's stained glass exercise was already taken care of at the beginning of Chapter 5, but whether or not players engage with it in the same way is unclear. One side quest did offer a new twist on the cemetery riddle I won't spoil. A new twist on a cemetery riddle? But read the sidebar learn. Okay. Exploring this larger area of the village reveals various new routes, interior or otherwise, giving me plenty of options for progression and uncovering extra goodies. That includes new lore notes that expand the supporting characters' backstories. Capcom says Ramon Salazar in particular has much more background to unearth. On top of finding additional ammo, treasures, and crafting materials, the alternate paths allow for new approaches for trekking through areas. When I re-enter the village square, I keep taking one way I believe to be the primary road until Hirabayashi showed me a hidden underground passage to the right of me that circumvents several enemies with less resistance. These areas always offered players a few options to get by, but it's exciting to see more of them. Well, that's fun. Wait. In Twins Reborn, an example of how the remake reworks RE4's puzzles in the cemetery is the cemetery twins. In the original, players could obtain a locked jewel hidden behind the church by rotating dials on a device to light up insignias matching the headstones of three pairs of deceased twins. A new side quest calls back to this riddle, challenging players to shoot the headstones for these the twins. After identifying the correct symbol, my memory of the original puzzle help me remember which insignia to look for, and it's a novel way for fans to apply their existing knowledge in a different way. So there's like some legacy element to the game. I mean, obviously everyone's gonna remember like how shit goes down. House party. I eventually reach the end of my trek with a horde of ganados in hot pursuit. Louis Serra, Leon's suave and suspicious ally, beckons us into a house for protection. After a tense exchange where Leon questions Luis's motives for assisting them, they table the conversation as the mob arrives to swarm the house. Tense exchange. Yeah, this is not the first time that you meet Luis, right? You meet Luis like after Chapter 1. And this chapter that they're in, the house battle, is, I believe, I guess, you know, Chapter 5, which is what they already played through. Funny, he's like mad at him for something. This battle, a memorable sequence from the original game, unfolds as it did in 2005, but with some tweaks. For one, you can now barricade windows using nearby planks, a la the Resident Evil 2 remake, in addition to blockading them using bookshelves as in the original. Capcom says Luis also behaves more intelligently and is a more capable ally. At one point I down an enemy with a headshot, then Luis quickly rushes over to stab them before he can rise again. He has a similarly quick response time throughout the battle, and I feel like I'm splitting the work with a real partner this time. It's good. I mean, yeah, in the original, he kind of got in the way. Like, his shots didn't do that much, right? He would give you ammo, so I'm assuming he would do the same too. That's good, because keeping as many Ganados out of the building is a more sweat-inducing challenge than before, but it's a test I relish as it puts the more enjoyable action on full display. By the time we gun down the final threat, I feel spent, but eager to take on whatever the game is ready to throw at me next. Living up to the name. Chapter 5 concludes, and I reluctantly relinquish the controller. The only thought on my mind, I want to keep playing. The action, tension, and presentation are very polished, and I walk away extremely impressed with what Capcom has presented thus far. So far, Capcom is nailing what it set out to do. The remake still feels like the original in many ways, but it doesn't trick me into believing it duplicates my rose-colored memory. Instead, it plays like a new game from an alternate timeline where RE4 debuted in 2023 instead of 2005. The differences are significant, but they blend seamlessly with the existing flavor in a way that can fool you into thinking they'd always been part of the recipe. I adore the previous remakes, especially RE2, for accomplishing the same feat, and it gives me confidence that RE4 is on the right track. That's good. I mean, it's like, that's all you would want, right? like, for a game to feel familiar, like it had always been there, and that it just feels like it could fit in the original, like as if like your nostalgia for RE4 is basically now fully realized in this remake. That is what I think they're trying to go for. The remake. You're literally remaking a previous game, says Godoy, but a remake gives you a chance to also build upon the original as well, I think. For instance, if the original was developed over 2 years, and the remake also is given 2 years of development, you can really think of the remake as a culmination of 4 years worth of work. Yeah, well. And in that case, naturally, you should be able to make something better with 4 years work than with 2. Maybe it's just me that thinks that way. So basically, like, essentially just adding more rather than changing things up drastically. What excites me most about RE4 is that it feels scary again. The immaculate lighting makes spotting an enemy's looming shadow as it moves across the village an intimidating sight. The hair-raising sound design makes every pain groan sound more excruciating, while also toying with your perception of its source. The Ganados are creepier than ever, the contorted anger on their faces expressed in terrifying detail. The game still has its off-the-wall action, but my trigger finger felt shakier. RE4 has many memorable moments, and I can't wait to see how Capcom makes fans fall in love with them all over again. If it all goes well, we may end up spending yet another decade swooning over Leon and Ashley's Spanish escape. Fuck yes. Let me see here. Building a case. The attaché case is a fan favorite of RE4. You can still arrange inventory items in a Tetris-like fashion, but Capcom is adding customization options to make the inventory feature actively useful in-game. You can now equip different types of cases that, in addition to dropping cosmetic flourishes, grant perks, such as increased ammo drops. On top of that, you can hang charms from the case modeled after items that also bestow small bonuses. The cases remain the same in inventory allotment, but this change gives players yet another option for customizing their experience. A little bit of RPG elements thrown in there, I suppose. I mean, it sounds great, right? Like, what else can I really say about it? Like,